morning, good afternoon. This is Tim Harris with the Harris Real Estate University, and this is, of course, Friday. So like every Friday here at the university at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon East Coast time, we provide our free superstar interview. Now, in the past, as many of you frequent listeners will know, we have interviewed a lot of top-producing realtors around the country. We've interviewed a lot of, I think, folks that aren't necessarily in the real estate industry, but people we thought you should hear from, economists of the sort, presidents of asset management companies, people that are having an influence or making good observations about the real estate industry, anyone who we feel will make a beneficial contribution to you. We've also got scheduled some fairly famous authors throughout the rest of the year and some people that will really surprise you, some Bravo TV stars, things of that nature. So we're going to have a lot of fun this year. Now, mid-last year, we provided an interview with Valerie Fitzgerald, and she is a mega-producing agent up in Beverly Hills, California. The feedback after that interview was probably some of the most positive feedback we've ever received after a superstar interview because of, frankly, I think who Valerie is. Her words, the praise that she had for the industry, the thoughts that she had with regards to how someone can be a long-term success in this business were really quite profound. But beyond that, I think Valerie has an interesting philosophy on life that frankly I think all of us can benefit from learning more from. So I asked Valerie last minute to be our superstar today, and I was going to originally schedule her for the end of March, but she was gracious enough to accept my invitation and be our superstar for today. So welcome to the call, Valerie Fitzgerald.
Thank you very much. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are.
Well, again, in replay, who knows, right?
Right.
So, but again, Valerie, I really appreciate you doing this today, and I know this is last minute. Hopefully we'll have a lot of fun, and let's do our best to do better than the last interview. What do you say?
That sounds like a great idea to me.
So on our last interview, we were having, I think, an interesting discourse, and what the students really seemed to appreciate was the fact that they were hearing from you, someone who's working directly with arguably some of the wealthiest people in the world, how their lifestyles and their attitudes and their mindsets had changed, maybe as a result of the Great Recession, or I don't know, maybe it was just a mindset shift away from consumerism. I'm not quite sure. But I'm interested in learning more about what's transpired in the last 6 or 7 months since we originally spoke in your marketplace. So I sent you the notes and the questions ahead of time, so let's jump right in. Sound good?
Absolutely.
All right, great. So just some preliminary stuff for the folks that don't know you. How long have you been selling real estate? And if you had to guess, if you were to add up all the volumes of homes you've sold, what would you guess that number was?
I've been selling real estate for 20 years, and I'd say if you add it all up, even in the last 10 years, I've done. This is a word that you read about, but I've done over $1 billion in business because I did easily $150 to $180 million a year there for quite a long time, and I always cruise right around 100.
What did you end up closing last year? I assume last year was arguably, besides your first year, your most challenging year?
Actually, 2008 was my most challenging year because I think that was the shift year. I think coming off a hot 2007 still that a lot of the sellers they were looking backwards at the comps from 2007, and their expectations were still pretty high in the sky. And so I think it was a year of that. Of people not quite understanding what is going on. What is this market? Is this slowing down? Is that buyer still out there who, that's going to pay 20% more? And, that was a big shift year for me in my business, and I quickly reacted by starting to change the way I was spending and what I was doing, and that was my toughest year in many, many years, was 2008.
So you said the real estate clients were trying to figure out what's going on. Do you think they've figured it out yet?
Yes, I do. I think that sellers have gotten into the rhythm that the market's not cruising up, 10 to 25% a year in different areas of the marketplace. I think that buyers certainly have the hang of it that they can get better buys, and I think everybody's. By the way, I think both sides through 2009 were sitting on the sidelines. I think buyers are sitting on the sidelines. I used to say they're sitting in the parking lot, waiting to see are the prices going to drop further? Are there going to be better buys? Are there going to be foreclosures? So buyers are really hanging out on the sidelines. In the beginning of 2009, I think that started to shift towards the fall. Once interest rates kind of hit the bottom in the fours, I think that buyers started to perform in the fall. last year, and sellers were sitting on the sidelines in terms of listing. Our listing inventory was pretty low, therefore, and it still is, because a lot of the sellers in the upper-end marketplaces don't want to, what they call, give away their properties, so they weren't putting them on the market for sale.
Well, you just said something interesting there. Well, several things. One thing in particular. So you're dealing with an average sale price, obviously, that's in the 7 figures, and I imagine occasionally you get one that's even higher than that, maybe in the low 8 figures, correct?
Yeah.
So you mentioned interest rates. So a lot of these folks are focusing on what their mortgage interest rates are, and they're mortgage sensitive. That's kind of surprising.
They are. They're mortgage sensitive. Well, look, perception's everything, isn't it? So even if the ones that we're getting, I know the maximum loan amount is $1.1 million, but even if they're spending $4 million, there's the perception of well, now is the time, the low interest rates, now the time's to buy. It's a perception of maybe I should start to look around. But there are many folks that are very interest rate affected, and of course that ties in with the jobs market, and what are they earning, and are they going to get a raise in the next year or two, and so their payment, they need to figure out what payment that they feel will match their job safety.
So it's an emotional thing in many cases.
It's always
an
emotional
financial thing. Sure, that makes sense.
Real estate's always an emotional thing.
So this wasn't one of our questions, but I just got this one on the webinar. I think it's kind of interesting. As someone actually down in Miami that sells expensive real estate, mortgages, financing, where are you going for your typical, obviously, let's say $4 million buyer with 20% or 30% down? Where are you going to get that person financed?
I mean, where am I going? You mean in terms of a mortgage broker or a mortgage company?
Right, exactly. I think that's what our friend in Miami is asking. What is the tip, like, for example, what companies are you finding that are the easiest to deal with on, obviously, non-FHA jumbo buyers?
Oh, what banks?
Right.
Here, Union Bank, Citibank, we've had, Wells Fargo's a little difficult in our marketplace. They always require a little more of a down payment. Obviously that's not my expertise and my forte and what I spend a lot of time, looking at, but these are the loans that we see. I don't have problems getting people loans.
Well, actually, you just said something I think is really worth mentioning. You don't try to memorize and know the mortgage markets.
No.
You have people that you trust, and when you get a good buyer in, you obviously refer that person to the loan officer, and you keep out of that end of the business.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, a lot of agents obviously try to wear multiple hats. And in California, they can, because you can be an agent and a mortgage broker. A lot of agents were during the bubble. It's kind of interesting that you never did that. So why did you stay away from that?
You know what? I don't know. Honestly, out of the 10,000 agents I know in this marketplace, I don't know one of them that wore both hats.
Interesting.
I think it's been very separated here in our marketplace.
So I just had a great question come in. He actually said it probably better than I wrote it, but Mark said, Valerie, what are the key ingredients to becoming a mega producing agent?
Everyone thinks there's like that silver bullet, that there's one or two things you can do, and all of a sudden you're a mega producing agent. And I think if you're starting from scratch, it's going to take you at least 5 years to get into the rhythm of all the things that you have to do to build a business. This is building a business. This isn't, a hobby that you can go sell a couple houses and say, yay, I'm a big agent, And particularly now, and I think for those of us that have been around a lot, and now you start looking back at your business and how you're changing it and how you're not spending, into the magazines and the papers and the mailers and the things we used to do, and how much the internet matters, and how you get involved with that in social media and all that, and the shift in the business in general and where that's going. There's no one secret. I think it's hard work, and I think it's a business plan, and I think there's goals and there's follow-up, and it's an absolute working at it every day, and you have to figure out what your marketplace is, who your demographic is, or I don't have a demographic. I work about 13 markets, but and then I have, I represent 2 major projects in the Los Angeles area of high-rise condominiums, where I have teams that sit them. So I decided I looked at my business, being in this business for a while, say about 5 or 6 years ago, and said, how can I leverage my time to make more money? So I opened up a division saying I'm going to start working on high-rise condominium projects, and of which there are very few in Los Angeles of that type. So I've got two of the newest ones, a 23-story one and about 100 units, 120 units in one and about another 100 units in another, and figured out the formula and figured out how to put that together. And I'm learning all the time because I think in real estate you can't, it's not a business that you can learn and then go out and do. You have to learn as you go along.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm learning as I go along because I have no clue how I was going to do that business. So there's so many moving parts to it, but I think the number one thing is you got to have the heart and the desire and you've got to really want to be in this business to be successful.
Well, and you also said a couple other things too. That you were kind of talking about the fact that you think like a business person. You recognize the fact that this is really a business. You start out maybe as a lone salesperson, but if you ever expect to get anywhere, you've got to kind of wear multiple hats, and you got to recognize what hats you should keep on, what hats you should delegate to other people, and that's what you've done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a really important point. A lot of agents don't ever seem to get the concept of them being business owners in their heads. Why do you think that is?
Well, we used to say if you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant, and when we only have a certain amount of time in the day, and I remember sitting down at my desk the other day, and I had my headset on. I was on one. I said, "I'm muted. Can you hold on, please?" Then I picked my cell phone rang. I picked that up and put it on the other ear, and then the girl walked to my office. She goes, "They have to talk to you right now on your phone." I went to pick the other line up, and I went, "I don't have a third ear to listen to." I think that you have to understand that there's so many multitasking things that you have to do, and so many problems you have to be able to multitask and delegate and solve. We're problem solvers.
Yep.
And along with that problem solving is we have to watch how we spend our money, because a lot of times we don't have it when we're spending it. We get paid on commissions, obviously. So you have to know what your dollars are and what that monthly nut is going to start running you. And certainly it's a lot easier if you remember than it was in the old days. In the old days we were spending so much money in marketing and advertising because that's what everybody did, that the numbers were, I think our monthly nut was a lot higher than what today conceivably what it can be.
Absolutely, and we're going to definitely get into the more specific questions with regards to how you've changed your business as a result of the shift. But describe your typical client and how they've changed in the past few years. I remember the last time you and I spoke, you said you were seeing fewer of these sort of young gun entrepreneurial types buying places. Is that still the trend, or how has it changed?
Well, I think since the fall of last year, the people have been coming out. We've had a huge beginning of this year. I mean, a lot of big sales. And people are coming out and seeing after 2.5 years that the value is there and it's time to buy, and with all the perception, whether it's the first time home buyer $8,000 credit that is ending in the end of April, or whether the feds are are pulling out the Freddie Mac and the Fannie Mae mortgage-backed bonds, and the interest rates will start going up, and whatever that perception is that they're reading and they're hearing, and they are stepping out and buying. And there is money out there. But the young entrepreneur that's just doing a startup company, or just who was moving up the corporate ladder, those sales have fallen back a little bit because those markets don't have legs under them just yet. Their financial markets or their all the shake up between the Bear Stearns and the Morgan, the JP Morgans and the AIGs and all those kids that were young people that were working in those companies, can't spend like they were spending 3 years ago.
Was there what type of depreciation did you see in your marketplace, or did the people try to hold on to their property so they wouldn't have to suffer depreciation?
Well, I think that there's two answers to both of those things. I said that I think across the board we went at least 20%, and in many areas it's gone up to 40%, and certainly in our outlying areas it's gone well over 50%.
Well, a lot of folks have turned to leasing their property, so they would hoping to wait out the market and so forth. Has that trend changed, or is it still going on in your market?
Oh my gosh! Last year I think we ended up doing 49 leases. I wanted to kill myself. It's like, oh my gosh! But that those people that are in those houses are either going to buy them or going to buy something else, or the seller who said, "Oh, Valerie, I don't want to sell my house right now. Let's lease it." So we leased it. I know those leases are coming out this year, and that'll build up my listing inventory. So we did them, but.
Well, I mean, that was the ultimate answer for any seller that got sick of hearing price change calls, right?
Right. Absolutely.
I'll just lease it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting with what you said with regards to the upper end depreciation. We have agents in Manhattan and other really high-end areas, and of course those high-end areas, they didn't really suffer the depreciation really until maybe a whole year after the rest of the country, because they were still holding on to the values for the most part. So when you're dealing with a seller that essentially paid more and sometimes significantly more for their home than what it's currently worth, are you seeing quote-unquote distressed sellers in your marketplace, or sellers that are upside down in their homes?
Yes, but the interesting thing of the 18,000 or something foreclosures that we had in the state of California, there's only about 200 in the 13 markets that I work. So, and some of those are in areas that you wouldn't even drive into. But given the ones that have been defaulting, and what I've seen is that they have mortgaged their homes over the value of what they're worth. I saw one the other day that it was he put it on as a short sale, and he's going to get foreclosed, and at $2,695,000, and he owed $3.5 million. So that meant, so in 2005 he had taken out, it had obviously appraised for a lot more, and he had taken out all that money and all that cash. You don't feel too sorry for these people because they did get the money, out of their houses. But, and
it went somewhere.
Yep. And so you see a lot of that, people that overfinance their homes, and now that they're not worth the mortgages that they have on them.
Right. No, that is definitely there's a report that just came out this morning. I'm going to put it on the blog as soon as we're done here, that in the country, 15% of all homeowners with mortgages are now in default, or now basically headed to default. They're essentially, either going to be short sales or foreclosures if for some reason they don't catch their mortgages up. 15% if everyone with a mortgage. That's obviously some sort of national high at this point. Pretty staggering, I think.
Yeah.
So let's lighten the mood a bit, shall we?
Sure.
I know you've got, and this is kind of a touchy question, I know, because you work a lot with folks that don't want to have their names sort of broadcasted, but do you have any sort of celebrity real estate stories you could tell? I think being that I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and I know our Midwestern students are sitting back there under 2 feet of snow, I'm sure they can appreciate something from the left coast.
Well, let me see.
Last time we talked, you were working with Bruce Willis, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, no, Bruce is my client and friend, and I saw him last week. He's living in one of my buildings, and so I walked out of the front of the. I was standing in front of the building the other day, and he comes out and he says, "Oh, say happy birthday to my daughter." It was his daughter's 16th birthday, and I said to him, "So you're gonna get her I put my hands up like a steering wheel. Are you going to get her one of these, Bruce?" Like that. And he looked at me and he's like, "Thanks a lot." He says to me, "Thanks a lot." Because I said it, because her name's Tallulah, and she looked right. She was watching me when I said that. I said, "You going to get her one of these, Bruce?" And he started to laugh. Yeah, thanks a lot.
So you probably had a Prius lined up behind the building to give to her with a big bow on it.
Yeah, I don't know. He's not really like that. I mean, he's a pretty conservative dad. He's not Mr. Spender out there, watching. He's a pretty conservative guy, actually, and a good guy. And I'm working with Sharon Stone right now, and she's a doll. She's just a great girl. Really great.
How do you lead generate, Valerie? How do you go about finding your new clients? Where if you had to look at all the sold houses from last year, for example, or maybe so far this year, where did those originally come from? I always, one of the most important things that I always talk about is your database. And I was in my office yesterday just on top of my team about my database again. Because your database is your Bible, your database is your life, your database is your business. And whether you're just starting out in business, you can have a database. Because if you've got parents, you can talk to them about, going through their phone book and getting their client, getting their friends and client people that they know. And you could find ways to build a database. And those people will have to buy and sell eventually. I had something really interesting the other day. 35 million Americans will be buying or selling their last home over the next 2 years. 3 years. Wow. Where did you read that?
It was in the paper. It was in the paper. Because I write newsletters myself, so I'm always looking for new articles. And another 35 million are first-time home buyers. So you're looking at this going, okay, if I look at my business, if I don't change the way I'm doing business, then most of the folks in my database are going to be, or in that last home buying, selling kind of
The home before the home.
I won't have a business in 5 years.
Right.
So you have to know how to communicate with understanding that of course there's people in between, the older ones and the younger ones, but you have to understand how they communicate differently, because they communicate differently than the older ones. And I always talk about this sort of thing because the database is the most important thing you could possibly have that's going to drive your business forever. So getting back to that's how I get referrals. I do newsletters. I do my newsletters twice a month to about 15,000 people. I do one for the clients and one for brokers, because the broker thing is very important to me for referrals, and I've been getting great referrals around the country because I've added them onto my newsletter database, and so that's helped. But the database is what it all comes from. And, of course, there's new. My business comes from, it used to be a third from expireds, a third new business, and a third from past clients and referrals. And now it's a little less on the expired side because our marketplace is low on the inventory. But I'd say it's probably 20% on expireds, and the rest of it is on my current client base and referrals.
So you said you mail for your centers of influence past clients, your database. You mail them, well, I suppose there's a lot of folks in there, too, that are just friends and folks you've met at different functions. They all make it into your database, correct?
Correct.
So who wouldn't you put in your database? I mean, that might be a good question to ask.
Well, I think you take your database and you have to divide it up. I've got groups. I have a women's group because I speak to women's groups, so I have a group of women and those charitable things that I've gone to and I belong to and I'm on the board of. And then I have a group which are brokers. Then I have a group with my clients. And then I have a service vendor group. So I change them because you can't send the same material to, the roofing guy that you'd send to your client. You know what I mean? It's different. So I write a newsletter that I email to each group. I'm actually just 3 of them. I don't email to my vendor group. But
that's an interesting point, though, what you're saying. I'm hearing, and this is a really important point because so many, and I could tell in your voice that you understand this is the reason you're emphasizing it, but so many agents, never keep track of their centers of influence past clients, never call them, never prospect them. And if you ever talk with any top producer around the country, this is certainly true when Julie and I sold real estate, most of your business is always going to come from your center of influence past client as long as you're asking for it, as long as you're mailing them a newsletter, which I'm sure is, well, what is in the newsletter? Someone's going to ask that, so I just head them off the pass.
Okay, well, they're newsletters that I email, and what I do is I read a lot, and I'll find something that I find that I think is interesting, that is relevant to what's going on in our marketplace or information I want to share, much like you do on your information, articles or something you'll share on your blogs and so forth. And usually I'll put them onto my blogs or Facebook or something too after I'm done. But then I take that article when I decide on what it's going to be, and then I write something that is relevant to our marketplace that ties the article into what it means to our clients in my marketplace or to the brokerage world. And I write a little a paragraph or two in front of it on my newsletter, and then I attach the article.
Well, see, that's very simple, and that's, I think, a good point. I'm glad I asked that question because it's not like you're doing some sort of, multiple layout, could be printed in the New York Times Sunday paper thing. You're just essentially taking the stuff that is of interest to you, and you're putting it in an emailed newsletter, which goes hand in hand with my next question. And obviously that's something you're probably having somebody else assemble, I'm guessing? Oh, yeah.
We have our template format. There's a company that we use called Red Tomato, and they had set it up the format for us. It's very simple. You don't have to open a PDF. As soon as you click on, on the byline, it opens and it's right there.
Right. And how many people do you have in your own personal, just say your center of influence past client list? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, yesterday we were just going over it because we're merging what's on my personal computer. People forget. You email off your computer all the time. You forget that you've got a database on there that needs to be merged with your regular database. So I have about 30, I guess I had about 4,500 on my computer that we're merging into another one of clients of about 3,000. So, and then I have probably about, 6,000 or 8,000 on my brokers. So altogether I'm touching 15,000, 20,000 people a couple times a month.
And that's going to be your primary source of closed transactions in 2010, you suspect?
I'm sorry?
It's going to be your primary source of closed deals, that list, your centers of influence, past clients. Just I want to really emphasize this point.
Yes, it's been for years. You keep adding them and adding them and adding them, over the years. And the people that, there are often deals that don't go through, and you still have all that information,
right,
whether for both sides. But so you always add the information to, which I add it to the appropriate category, the way I set up my database. But the point is that because, look, how many seminars have you been to where someone says, oh, do you call your past clients? And it's like very few people ever raise their hand, especially if you've been in the business for a while, because you think maybe they're mad at you, something went wrong, and, you kind of hang your head down low, you haven't talked to them in 5 years. Well, if you have this newsletter, you can touch a lot of people all the time, often. And I've had many people come back to me and say, hey, Valerie, I'm really thinking about selling my house. Gee, I want to put my house on the market. It was $10 million for one. It was $6.5 million for another. And, I really think, and these are people you don't have to sit and dial the phone, because if you think about how many people you can call in an hour, it's maybe 5, 6, 7 people you can call in an hour. But if you do an online way to touch your database, you can touch a lot of people often.
Well, it's the top-of-the-mind awareness. That's what really you're focusing on, is really when those folks think about buying or selling, they just received or will soon receive an email from you with valuable information, and that will result in a phone call, and next thing you know, you have a lister or a buyer side.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thing, is staying top of mind. So it's kind of an interesting question, because the next question I've written down is, what have you stopped doing compared to 3 or 4 years ago? And I think what I'm hearing you say is virtually everything is electronic. You're not mailing a newsletter, you're emailing a newsletter. What other things have you stopped doing, say, compared to the bubble?
Well, I think probably the most important thing that I did for many, many, many years was I would mail a postcard once a month. And I went to about 30 or 40,000 people in our community. And that was a big source of, I used to call them come list me calls for me. And then but that was $5,000 a month, $5,000 to $6,000 a month. It would cost me. So in 2008, when things weren't looking so hot, and I was seeing that I was not going to be making the deals that I needed to do to support the costs that I had, I abruptly stopped. And at the same time, that's when we started putting together the newsletter concept and making those online changes. So I went there for a while, and that's why 2008 was a big transition year for me, without having that postcard going out and just beginning the online stuff. So I was like the fish, swimming in the pond, learning, all, from like a brand new baby, learning a whole new thing, and suffering trying to stick with the new change. And so I stuck with that new change, and then I thought, I'm going to mail a postcard out, and I just did one in January to see what the results would be. And we sent one out, and I got 3 calls from it. But but like that little real estate junkie, I had to go back and just say, well, okay, I haven't been doing it now for nearly 2 years. Let me see what happens if I send one out. Well, we also all know you can't just send one thing out one time and expect a result. You have to do things that are repetitive.
Like spending money without getting results, but in that case, you had a little taste, and so you wanted to keep doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we kind of tinker with this and play with that and see how much money we have to do this or that, because you have to spread it out over what's going to be my highest results, my highest return for the money I'm spending and the time I'm spending.
Well, in your marketplace, what is that? I know you're obviously emailing your newsletter, and I assume that's your highest result. What after that works the best?
Well, I only do things now that have measurable results. So I do one full page in what our local paper is, which is the LA Times on a Saturday edition. And the LA Times gives me the results of all the eyeballs that click through my ads and my pictures. Well,
hold on. So you're not doing an LA Times newspaper ad. You're doing an LA Times ad on their website.
I have both.
Oh, both. Okay.
Yeah. So I get the results of people that see, because it's branding, into that mix of our marketing and all that is the branding. So I keep the brand going, my brand in the face of our marketplace here, by keeping that page visible. And then the online stuff results come that I can send to my clients. Gee, Mr. So-and-so, you live at this street. You had this many hits on, and it shows the hits. It shows how many people looked at what pictures. It shows all those results, and I can give those to my clients as a result of that every month.
So you have got to be one of the most connected online social networking agents that I've come across. I mean, I follow you on Facebook, and I know you've got somebody that helps you with all that, and she does a brilliant job. So in this price range, how important is it that you're using social network and being connected online?
I don't think it's a price range. I think it's a demographic. I think that we just don't know yet what the result is going to be of people who are going to be using the social networking things for business. Don't forget, we're talking about that a younger generation and the way they communicate. And so I don't want to miss that. And Facebook has brought me, I'd say about 5 or 6 very good connections and results. So it's all in the numbers, right? It's all in the numbers. You stay out there, I've got to know. They kicked me. They stopped me at 5,000 friends, and I think we had to add a couple fan pages for an overflow of like 7,000 people. So when we send something out on Facebook, there's another 7,000 people it goes to.
Do you know how you're specifically, like, give us, for example, how you're using Facebook? Are you interacting with folks? Are you going on there and saying hi, or what are you doing specifically?
Me personally, I go on Facebook. Yeah, I go on Facebook every 2 days or so. And because there are things on my inbox that are specific to me, and I answer those. And usually it's about my book, responses about my book, which is a very personal thing that I have to respond to. It is people connecting. It's more of a I don't post personal. Hey, this is one other thing. My Facebook account is business. I don't post, here I am on Saturday going to the market, you know. I don't tweet that way or Twitter that way. I don't have anything personal on Facebook. So therefore we don't have any of the crazy people that say things that, could otherwise be embarrassing, or people that can comment and things like that. We've got a real strong business following on Facebook, and I actually believe over time, given that demographic, that we will see it used in more of a business way.
Well, the numbers you just gave earlier, which were fantastic, 35 million people, 2 years from buying their last home, and 35 million people are essentially first-time buyers. In a lot of ways, right.
It's a big percentage of the population.
And you're communicating with a lot of the ways that the younger generation communicates. That's how they communicate. The idea of picking up a phone is uncomfortable because they can just go and send someone an email, an instant message, or a text.
Right. I have a 23-year-old daughter. She does not answer the phone when I call her. She'll BBM me. She won't even email me. She'll BBM me on my BlackBerry. So it's like, you have to understand how they think and how they respond.
Has that been difficult for you to adapt to?
No. Initially, I was like, what? And then my phone would, because I get over 300 emails a day, my phone would beep for this and have another sound for that, for the for the text message, another one for the email, and another one for the BBM. And I was like, whoa, there's so many different things to check and sounds to check. But now, once I got the hang of it, I actually am on it all the time. I look for it, so I can see how they grow up with this instant hit of information all the time. Instant satisfaction of a response all the time. I mean, we used to have to wait for someone to call us back.
Like a day.
Yeah, right.
So has that been hard, adapting to that mindset of instant satisfaction? Give me the information now. How much of a shift has that been for you?
Oh, I've made the complete shift. I'm now the same way.
You expect the same thing.
I do. I expect the same thing.
That's an interesting. There's probably people out there, potential buyers and sellers, that are in a lot of ways testing you before they even decide to engage with you as hiring you as a professional, to see how you communicate and how quick you are with follow-up. I'm sure you found that to be true, where you'll have a potential seller that just sort of starts courting you over one of the social networks, and 90 days later you're listing the house. Do you have any examples of that?
I think that's a very good point, and I have to say sometimes now I don't check my cell phone, for a day or two, which is crazy because sometimes I find 12 messages on there, because I do so much emailing, so much texting, and so much of the BBM on it all the time. So I've totally gone in that direction, And yes, do they test you? Absolutely. I mean, and usually the testing that I'll get would be more of the email type. How quickly do you respond on your email? Right. They do not want you to write 3 paragraphs. They want you to say whatever you have to say in, 2 sentences.
And it's interesting. People will choose to work with you because you are adapting to the new way of communicating.
Yeah.
You'll lose business. That's just really the bottom line. You'll lose business because you prefer to do a phone call, if not an email, if you don't know how to text, if you don't know how to instant message. They'll actually choose somebody else because you, in a lot of ways, as strange as this sounds, literally don't speak their language.
Right. There's no question. If you look at, like I come to my webmaster, people that email to my website, it'll say your preferred contact, and they always say email.
That's right.
Even though their phone could be there, so I don't call their phone. I email them.
And if you do try to call them, they're probably going to automatically discount you because of the fact that you weren't comfortable emailing, because you weren't comfortable communicating that way. And, it is very interesting. There is an obvious shift happening. I see it happen with all the top producers. All their business is migrating to communicating online using the different little systems and so forth, and away from the phone, which is so different, Valerie, than just 5 years ago. Isn't that amazing?
It is. It's moving so quickly, and that's why I'm stressing it's so important. I think the next biggest thing that we're doing this right now in my business is we're moving my entire business onto something called Salesforce. Right.
It's a CRM. So you're basically moving all of your business essentially online.
Yep.
So everything's completely tracked for you. That's
everything. Escrow, project, everything tracking so that we can give one report to our sellers. This is, instead of calling them up and saying, you had 4 showings this week, and you had an open on Sunday, and you had an open on Tuesday, we could put it all into Salesforce and give them one report. Your ad was here, your leads were here, your thing was here, it came from the website, all of that, and they love it.
Well, so you're moving away from some of the traditional real estate business management softwares like, Top Producer and the rest of it, and you're using Salesforce. Have you used those programs before? Any particular reason you chose Salesforce?
I've looked at I've CRM. Well, here's what it is that when I've got all these units to track on these projects, it's very hard to remember which one had what color kitchen and which one is, what unit is this and that. I mean, I have a lot of it in my head, but it makes me pretty crazy when I'm driving. I drive 5 hours a day. So when I'm driving and doing and thinking and emailing and texting, I've gotten 2 text tickets for texting in the car. That I have.
That's not good, Valerie.
I know. I was sitting at the light the other day, and the policeman pulls up on my passenger side. He knocks on my window. I'm texting, and I roll down the window. He goes, And then I said, I'm not driving. I'm sitting at the light.
Well, California, they have to raise revenue any way they can.
Right. But at any rate, where was I going with that?
We were talking about texting. We were talking about, the fact that you're getting business from texting.
Well, I think that it's just the immediate response. I mean, when someone texts you, they want a response back right away.
You lost your train of thought when you were thinking about your tickets.
I did. You're 100% right. I'm like, oh no, not another third one.
So in your marketplace, it seems like you're seeing, in the upper end marketplace, which is really most of your sales, are you seeing a lot of folks that are moving down, moving up? Where would you say you see the most movement in that sort of uber upper end?
Let's see. Uber upper end is I've got like 3 buyers right now that think this is the time now to buy up, to buy that larger, more expensive property. The problem is that there are very few of them, so the inventory is low. So like this morning, I'm going out looking at something with a client that's $7.5 million, and we've been circling. We made some offers on some other things, but I think that's a move up. Because it's like in New York City. I've got friends of mine that are agents there, and they're saying, hey, so something that used to be $45 million now they can buy for $30. That's a great buy, or that property that was $25 is now $14, and so those buyers that have money that are sitting on the sidelines, are starting to buy. We've had a record beginning of the year for properties over $5 million this year.
You personally or your market?
The market.
Huh, interesting.
I would if I could find some inventory.
Well, there's this great thing called calling your centers of influence and past clients. You might want to email them. So in your marketplace, what are the trends you're seeing and this is kind of going back to the previous conversation we had with regards to people sort of moving away from one philosophy of living, if you will, towards another. Are you seeing any trends? Maybe trends that have changed since the last time we spoke, housing, lifestyle, how people in that stratosphere are coexisting with the rest of us mere mortals?
It's interesting. I was with a buyer the other day, and we talked about how things probably every 10 years change in terms of what is offered. Now, even he, as we were looking at properties, he said, "Oh my God, this house is dated. It was in the 90s type design," because the kitchens are more. Life has become less formal here in terms of the lifestyle and homes that people like. So you'll often see the kitchens open to the family room. You'll often see the more open kind of casual, living. The living rooms get smaller because people and the master bedrooms get bigger because when they get older they spend more time in their bedroom, and the kitchen family room becomes more important and the living room is less used. So you start to see how the trends change and how and older people that are moving down from a formal house, that a traditionally formal house, now they want to lighten the load. They want to have less stuff. They want a more casual lifestyle. They want it's different. It's really different. And when he commented on it, and I thought that was a really interesting perception. You wonder what it's going to be like 10 years from now.
Well, that's actually a good question. The younger folks that you're starting to communicate with and see enter into that upper-end marketplace, what are they looking for? Are they looking to buy these big sort of, you're dealing with honest-to-God mansions, not McMansions. So are they looking to buy those properties or something different?
No, I think the first time, that what we call the ones that are living in condos that are moving, there's always that thing that you start off, in a condo, owning a little condo, and then you sell that because you're married and you're starting your family into your 3-bedroom family home, and then as you get more successful, you move up into the next price range, and some people move up after that, or they don't, or they stay there for 15 years and their kids go off to college and then they move back down to the condo. So it's kind of like that probably for everybody, that move, but that's how they move here. That's how it goes. And the younger families that want homes, and they want 2,500 square feet, and they want the schools are very important, and often they want to go flat into the flatter areas, not our hills, and they want the sidewalks, and they want that family. They don't have live-in housekeepers for the most part, and that's sort of what they look for, and they're not afraid to do work.
So as far as trends go, you just said something interesting. Basically, condos, right? So you have a lot of first-time buyers that are starting out there, and you have a lot of it sounds like people that are headed back towards condos. So maybe indeed condos in your marketplace will be an interesting trend going forward.
Well, that's why about 6 years ago I wanted to get into that business, because I knew that had to be, and that also leverages my time because I've got sales people that sit on those buildings. That's what they do all day, every day. So that leverages my time, and then when the buyers are interested and they come into play, then I do the negotiating on that, and it can give me 50, 60, 70, 100 sales over there, spread out over a 2-year period, and not to mention that I work exclusively on my resale business. So
right, some of those buyers of those condos will have properties to list, and just old-fashioned multiple transactions off one sale. It's great.
Right.
So how have you changed, just sort of shifting gears on you a little bit? It's interesting. I'm kind of thinking back to our previous interview, Valerie. You seem personally to be you seem to be resolved, I have to say. You seem that I don't sense any sort of uncertainty, whereas before we were speaking, we were all sort of trying to figure out how big of a shift this economic collapse was going to have on the way people bought and sold real estate. It seems like we're past that, doesn't it?
We are.
Yeah. So what personal changes have you made, sort of shifting gears, and in your own life, and maybe even with your business, and how you're adapting to this new market?
I'm not sure I understand the question. And what changes are affecting me personally?
Well, what have you changed as a result of the shift in the economy and the housing market, personally and professionally?
I think personally how I spend, but I think everyone has. I think I watch what I spend, where I spend it personally, the value of what I'm getting for that. Would I go an extra couple blocks because the gas is going to be less money? And I think, well, why would I give them more money because the real estate's more expensive? You know what I mean? So it's silly things like that I've looked at that I didn't look at before. But I think the world has changed that way, and I think a lot of people are looking at that, saying, hey, you know, I'm looking for value, and everything I spend personally. And business, I've done the same thing. I look for value, the highest result for the effort that we spend to maintain our business, both financially and our client base.
Have you changed? Last time we spoke, you and I were sort of joking around that you weren't certain you were going to get another Bentley after your lease was up.
Right.
What did you
still
decide
feel
to
the
do?
same way.
You still feel the same way.
Oh,
Interesting.
Yeah. After 14 flat tires, I'm tired of this car. It's $600 a tire, thank you. So I'm tired of this car.
Little value there is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are your biggest challenges right now? What are your works in progress?
Well, my biggest challenge right now, my work in progress, is the sales force. That's a big shift. We've got a huge, a lot of information, a lot of business, all of our marketing, all of our escrows, all of our contacts, all the web stuff, all of that we have to now put into that new system.
That is a huge job, because you're not only doing that, but in a lot of ways, there's not very many other top producers that have used Salesforce like you're using it. So you're, in a lot of ways, trying to integrate a business model that Salesforce doesn't, I would assume, normally contend with. So when you have that done, I think you're probably going to have a lot of other agents asking you how you did it.
Yeah, well, you got to personalize it. I mean, you've got to customize every single tab and every single area to what you need. So that makes you, which is a good thing, is it makes you reevaluate what your business is.
Because what I'm sensing is you're envisioning your business to be like 100% virtual. I mean, that's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, for the most part, it will be. There'll always be branding things, because the branding is a visual thing, and that there's always be certain things I'll do for branding that to maintain in sort of the public view of an overall way. So, but those have become less and less.
So I just had an interesting question come in, and there's Julie, if you can go through these questions and make sure. A lot of great comments people are really appreciating. A lot of folks that have heard you speak at other things, too. I'll mention their names here in a second. But someone just asked a question. It's actually very similar to the next question I was going to ask you. So you've been one of the nation's leading agents for years, and you've succeeded consistently. What have been your biggest career mistakes or missteps? What is something, if you could say, don't do this, right?
Yeah.
What would be two or three don't do thises?
Well, in the very beginning, let's see, when I first started out, I didn't pay my taxes and used that money instead and put it into my business, so that had a not a very pleasant effect. So pay your taxes. I think that in the beginning I didn't watch, initially I think about in the early 90s, I didn't watch what I was spending, and I found out that I was spending 70% of my income on my business, and I was way behind. So you have to watch your numbers, watch what you spend. In order to grow, you have to be really aware of what things are effective, and the costs of them. I think it's what's effective, the cost, and where your time is. These are really critical things you have to watch in the real estate business.
And money management too. Those are those are huge, right?
Huge.
Money management is not easy in the real estate business
because we work on commissions. We don't know when they're coming.
That's right. And the nature of how sometimes we have these really great months and these other months where you're just sort of listening to the crickets.
Yeah.
And wondering what the heck is going on. I remember.
I'm not listening to crickets. I'm out there beating on the doors. I'm when things get like that, I am the exact opposite. Some people take to the bed, go to bed, and get depressed. I'm the one out there pounding everything I can.
Or rattling the gates, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So you wrote a book called Heart and Soul. Tell us about that book.
Yeah, Heart and Soul. It's how to survive and build a recession-proof business. The book started off because Simon & Schuster is my publisher, and they had called me and asked me if I would consider writing a book. One of the editors had seen a show that I had done called Empowering Women, and she said, gee, I like your story, and would you consider writing a book? So, true to my nature, I said, sure. So they said, send us a sort of a treatment of what subjects you could put in the book. So I thought it was kind of just a lark, kind of a funny thing, and we wrote bang, 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 wrote some things. And then she emails me back. She goes, okay, we'll buy it. And I was like, oh, holy moly! Now I have to. Oh my God! Now I have to. How am I ever going to write a book? So it kind of started out that way, and then I thought, well, because I worked during the day, I would come home at night, and about 7:30, I set up myself with these two huge 5-foot by 5-foot writing boards. And for quite a few months, I researched, and I'd go to the bookstores and see what there was in the various categories of the chapters that I had said I would write about, and there wasn't very much. And so I researched that, and I spent about 4 months looking through and thinking about and writing down, and I started putting them up on my vision board and in different categories. It's sort of kind of how I fashioned the chapters. And then I just started to write I wrote it longhand at night on these big yellow tablets, and then I had a girl that came and helped me after the fourth chapter that would help me then pull it together and help me transcribe it, and she was very helpful. And I had girlfriends that would read things and tell me, gee, this doesn't sound exactly right, you need to develop that more, and we kind of just put it together, and it became successful. It became number one on Amazon, the top business book, motivational book, and real estate book a couple of times, and it's I'm really proud of it. It's a book about the lessons and stories about how I built my business from being completely broke with a baby and no means of support at all for myself, and built my business literally carrying her around to all my appointments and all the mistakes I made and some of the joys I had.
Well, your book is very personal, which is kind of an interesting opposite of how you really are focused on being very professional. You mentioned Facebook is about being professional, about branding, about making sure you're always broadcasting that professional image, not putting anything personal out there. And yet the book, Valerie, is very personal.
It is.
And I think in a lot of ways that's what makes the book so real, because it's genuine. You're not just giving advice. You're explaining to your readers what your life has been, what you've experienced, and how you've overcome the different challenges that you've personally had. Anyone out there who hasn't read Valerie's book, go to Amazon, buy the book. It's unquestionably one of the best. I'm not even going to say real estate books, because it's a real estate book, but it really isn't. It's more a book about how to survive, how to thrive, and how to have a mindset. You heard Valerie say when her business slows down, she goes out there and knocks on doors. That's kind of the mindset and the feeling you get from this book. It's someone who's truly out there to better herself and wants to always have the mindset of giving. So in your book, Valerie, it is very personal. Was that hard for you, given how, seemingly professional and almost private you seem to be?
And I am both. I never talk about my personal self with any of my clients. I don't get chummy. I don't bond in that way. I'll bond in terms of my information, what they need, but I never talk about myself personally. And was it hard? I had to make the decision. Either I was going to be truthful about, what was I doing it for? Why would I write this book, and why would I make that commitment? And it had to be, to me, it had to be truthful. It had to reach inside. All the brokers will stand aside and say, oh, well, I sold this, and I'm that, and I'm number one in my marketplace, and it's sort of that standoff, because we're kind of competitors, but I don't have those relationships with brokers. I'd rather be upfront and honest. Hey, it sucks. It's hard. It's hard to be a single mom and build a business. It's hard to be going through a divorce. I used to speak, and people would say to me, well, I can't be like you because I'm going through a divorce. I'm going through a terrible time. My parents are sick, or I'm supporting this, or I've got 3 kids, or I'm going through a divorce, or something, or I'm sick. And I'd say, you know what? I've had all of those things happen in my life. And more. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to put it in my book. I'm going to be truthful and totally honest up front and say, I understand anything. And in spite of all those things, you still can be successful.
Maybe those things help to make you successful, too. Maybe it's just the opposite of those folks making excuses not to do something. There's sort of lessons to be learned in all these sort of diverse experiences that we're experiencing throughout the course of our lives. And it's those very experiences that make us stronger. And that seems to be what you've done with some of the challenges you've had. You've used them as, I think, building blocks, really, to where you are today.
There's no question. But I think the mindset that people sit there and think that they're quietly suffering at their desk, that nobody in this room understands, that I have all this stuff going on. But, the thing is you have to be able to contain it, put it off to the left or the right, whatever, and go. You've got to go out there and you've got to do your business. You can always come back and deal with whatever is on your plate. And I had no choice but to take my daughter everywhere to work with me. I mean, that was what I had to do. So, and to this day, it's funny because to this day, whenever the other day I was showing a house and the girl said, "Oh my God, how's your daughter? How's your daughter?" I haven't seen her since she was, 12. And I said, "Well, she's 23." So people, they, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. I remember the diapers and they all remember that because I had to take her to work with me at the time.
And your daughter works with you now?
No, she doesn't. My daughter's a model. No.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Got it. So, what motivates you, Valerie? I mean, you're clearly someone who's been successful for a long period of time. You've got great energy just talking with you, and I'm sure all the hundreds of folks that are listening right now are feeling your spirit. What motivates you? How do you stay motivated?
I love what I do. And the other night, last night, I think I was talking to someone, and they said, "Oh my God, yeah, that's right." An elderly French couple I represent. They were going back to Europe, so I went to have lunch with them yesterday, and they said to me, "Oh, Valerie, you work so hard. You work all the time. You work so hard." And I said, "But you know what it is? I love what I do." And it blends in with, sometimes when you love what you do, it blends in with your life too. So I don't feel like, "Oh my God, it's Friday. Thank God, at the end of the week, it's over." I don't ever feel that way. It's something that maybe that's why I'm good at it, is because I really enjoy it. I love the challenges. I love to think about it. I love to get something new going. I get really excited by that, and all the stories are different and people are different. They're a pain in the neck often, but I just really like it. I like all the differences.
So really, at the heart of it, it's the mindset of service. I mean, even if you didn't necessarily use those words, the interaction with other people and helping them solve problems or helping them accomplish a dream of buying their, dream home, as it were, that's what seems to drive you. You didn't mention, it's interesting, you didn't mention money. You didn't mention anything that would be associated with, I want to buy a nicer this or a nicer that. It's the people aspect that you seem to be really drawn to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the money comes. When you love doing something, the money will come.
That's pretty much a truism no matter what you do for a living, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if someone comes to you today, and we're going to wrap this interview up, if someone comes to you today, just on the street, and I'm sure you get this question a lot, I'm interested to hear what you say, and they say, "Valerie, should I get into real estate?" Given all that you know, all that you've been through, what's going on in the economy, what's going on in the real estate markets, what do you tell them?
Absolutely. I think but there's certain things. I mean, you have to. It's not. When the market was flying in 2005, 6, and 7, and people were jumping in and doing their 1 or 2 deals here and there. If that's what they're doing and it's a part-time thing, and gee, I want to make it $30,000 or something, I would say don't bother, because this isn't the time nor the change or the market to be doing it. But if you really are excited about, I loved all the different houses and different places people live and the condition of them, good and bad, and the people, they're big and they're tall. This is one business that has no discrimination. You can be any age, any size, any accent, from any background and be successful. Yeah, that's true, especially in your market because there's such diversity. Yeah, it just doesn't matter. You just have to have the heart and the soul to go out and get it and pursue it with a smile on your face, and not take things personally is really important, because you've got screaming clients half the time, threatening you and all that stuff. So, if an agent wants to send you a referral, how can they do that? My website is www.valeriefitzgerald.com, and my email is Valerie, VALERIEFIT@AOL.com. I'm going to be changing it to Valerie at ValerieFitzgerald.com as we change over to Salesforce, but it'll all come together. I'm going to go through some of these questions real quick, guys. Salesforce, if you're not doing a big volume of business, you really don't need to worry about it. Right. Yeah, don't even. I was just looking at my questions. I had 20 people coming in. They were freaking out because they didn't know what Salesforce was. Bottom line is, don't worry about it. Right. Most of you, how many... Salesforce is something. What she's doing, guys,
is something that I don't know if anyone in the real estate industry has done before. Believe me, I'll keep in contact with her, and once she gets all of her systems integrated, then we'll let you know. But at this point, guys, if you're just doing, even if you're only doing 100 transactions, you can, use one of the other existing programs with no problem. But Valerie's business has so many different branches to it that she's using it to track, which is really admirable. And so someone asked us this interesting question, Valerie. Cindy from California, she said last week during this call we did a whole thing on personality profiles. I'm sure you've taken a million of those tests, DISC. And Cindy said she's been spending her week trying to identify what different people are, and she was wondering what your personality style is. I'm sure you've taken the original test or something like it.
Oh, it's been so many years, though. Tim, I have no clue.
Cindy, I would say that Valerie is most definitely a driver, and I would say that her secondary personality would be an influencer. Julie, would you concur? Yeah, Julie said yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So, and that's what Cindy guessed, by the way.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice job.
I actually like both words, so it works for me.
Well, there you go. There's your proof.
There's proof. All right, so Mo from Dallas wants to know where he can get your book and what the title of it is again.
My book is Heart and Sold, SOLD. You can just type that into Amazon and my name, Valerie Fitzgerald, and it'll pop up.
So for all the agents that are out there...
It's $10, I think, on Amazon.
That's right. So for all the agents that are out there that are listening now and will be listening in the future into replay, because the last interview we did with you, it was downloaded more than any other interview we've done before.
Oh.
So for all the agents that are out there listening now and in replay, what closing thoughts would you like to leave with them?
Boy, I think that I understand that the market is the market. That we have a job to do, that we need to really look at what we're doing and what is the most effective way to maximize our time, leverage our efforts and our time, and go out and make some sales. I think that don't say, oh, it's the market that's getting to me. It's not the market. There's always going to be people buying and selling. You just have to get to them, or you have to get to them and let them know that this is a great time. Maybe you send them a great. I know as you move around in your marketplace, as you see great buys, do you just keep it to yourself, or do you maybe should get online and send it to your database? Hey, does anybody know anybody that wants to buy this great buy on whatever street? I wouldn't give them, I have a great buy on this street at this price or something like that, and you don't want people going directly to buy it from the other agent, but. There's always business to be done. You just have to figure out how to go out and get your share of it.
And if you're not attracting enough business to you, it's just a function of getting in front of more people, but obviously knowing how to solve their problems. And the problems and the challenges and the questions that they have today are completely different.
Right.
Valerie, it's completely different than just 2 or 3 years ago. And if you don't know how to solve their problems, they're not going to use you. So,
the only way you can solve their problems is to find out what the objection is.
There you go. Right. Exactly. And then discover the solution. In some cases, that's helping them, because they're a distressed seller. In other cases, it's helping them just because they're confused about the market. They're not knowing what direction it's going. Your level of knowledge in a marketplace like this is through the roof by comparison just a few years ago. Really is no comparison. It's like a completely different industry. If you think you're going to get in this thing and just sort of grace through and pick up some sales here and there and wing it, it's not going to happen. It just really isn't. You really have to be professional. And I think that's what Valerie is really trying to emphasize on this call. So Valerie, listen, thank you very, very much for being this week's Superstar.
You
are a lot of fun.
Talk to you.
It's interesting while we were talking, I could just think of a million different ways we could go, but I don't want to obviously take your time. You've got a $7.5 million house to go sell.
Yeah, I hope that's going to happen this morning.
Well, we do too. So on behalf of Julie, myself, and all the faculty and staff of Harris Real Estate University, Valerie, thank you for being this week's Superstar. And to all the rest of you, listen to this replay again and again and again, and understand that Valerie has been there, done that. Go to Amazon right now. Buy her book. I read it maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. Fantastic book. Very inspirational and motivational. It's for everyone. There's nobody on this call that wouldn't benefit from hearing what she has to say. And, of course, any referrals that are going out towards the Beverly Hills area, send them to Valerie. And if it's not in her immediate service area, I'm sure she'll hook you up with a neighboring agent. So on behalf of Julie, myself, and all the faculty and staff of Harris Real Estate University, thank you for joining us for this week's Superstar interview.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.